I would like to start with 4 words. And what is it that this presentation is about? I think the point has been made several times today that the climatic conditions are the main driver of the disease. And therefore the development of a control strategy is also dependent of those climatic conditions. The strategy that's developed for a country and will be successful in a country might not be successful in another country simply because the climatic conditions are so different. We've seen how different the bacteria behave in countries like Chile, New Zealand, Italy. And therefore what would be working for New Zealand would not probably be working for other countries. So what I would like to do, it is to talk about the elements that could constitute a strategy. And then people can take those elements and build a strategy which is adapted to the climatic condition under which they grow kiwi fruits. In addition to that, I have to actually unearth the fact that at this stage we do not have a strategy that would guarantee control of PSA in New Zealand. So I'll present some of the work that we've done that show the principle behind the options and talk about the options and how we got to where we are. So let's talk about what causes disease. It has been presented before. It is the interaction between the pathogen, the host, and the environment. And therefore, if we want to disrupt disease, if we want to control disease, we have 3 factors under which we can put pressure. We can play on the pathogen, on the host, on the environment. So for example, on the host, we could use some plants which are resistant to PSA. Or we could elicit the plant such that the plant becomes resistant to PSA. In the environment of the host, we have some management practices and orchard hygiene, and I'll talk a little bit about that because I believe it is extremely important. The environment, yes, we can modify the environment such that it is less conducive for PSA. There's a number of experiments that have been conducted in Italy and in New Zealand where some cover are put over orchards. And that does modify the environment, does modify the humidity, does modify the temperature, and does modify the speed at which PSA can infect the plant. At the end, I'll talk a little bit more about the role of relative humidity in the development of the disease. And finally, for the pathogen, yes, we can apply pressure, we can use some phytosanitary products. Okay, why do I want to talk about orchard hygiene? So this is Italy, this is where the disease started in Latina and then it's moved up. And finally you find it in places like Piemonte and Friuli and Emilia-Romagna. Clearly it is not the wind, it is not the rain, it is not the bees that have brought the disease from Latina to those other places. It is most probably human behavior. It is most probably the transport of some contaminated material. In New Zealand, we have exactly the same situation. While we could explain the movement and the distribution of PSA in this region by natural means, wind, rain, and so on and so forth, it is hard to imagine how the bacteria which is here could end up over there without the help of human intervention. So therefore, it's why orchard hygiene is so critical. On the KVH website, there is a whole page dedicated to orchard hygiene, and it has been divided in a number of sections, such as orchard visitors, staff and contractors, tool hygiene, machinery and vehicle hygiene, harvest, bees, hive hygiene. But when you look at the purpose is always the same. The purpose is to avoid the introduction of a new inoculum into a region. There's different ways to do it, and I won't go into the details of that because I've seen it put here in practice in Chile. It has been talked a bit before. But basically what you want to do is to stop the introduction of new material. And the material which is the most dangerous is the plant material, as we've seen earlier. Any plant material, any kiwi fruit that is infected has the potential of introducing the disease in a new area. So all those techniques which are described here are all aiming at reducing and removing completely the plant debris that could be moving from one orchard to the next. Okay, we did a lot of work on product testing and screening, and I'll talk a little bit about this. First, the rationale, the goal and the strategy of that program, the product testing program. There is the hypothesis that one day we will have a cultivar of kiwi fruit that will be resistant to PSA. And when we have that, well, that's the holy grail, we're all happy, we don't need anything else. The reality is, until that cultivar is out there, we need to protect the existing orchard, and we also need to protect the existing cultivar. That will require a number of phytosanitary products. And if we have some new cultivars, they might not be fully resistant. And so therefore, it might be that the solution at the end will be a combination of new cultivars of kiwi fruit that are more resistant to PSA with new management options and some treatments. In November 2010, when PSA was found in New Zealand, as you see in the month that followed, it was a disaster, so therefore there was a huge pressure for us to find as rapidly as we could some product that could be used immediately by the New Zealand kiwi fruit industry. And so therefore, we had to develop and use a bioassay to select among several hundred products of those which we thought would consistently and significantly reduce the incidence of disease. And that has been a major driver of the product screening program. So it was relatively easy through a search to find 300 products that had the potential of killing PSA. And the question was, of those 300, which one actually do work? So we had to establish a prioritization system because we couldn't test them all at once. So here are the criteria we look at. The first one is, what is the market access potential? Is there any post or pre-flowering restriction to those products? What is the commercial potential, availability of that chemical formulation? There is no point of us finding a chemical that for whatever reason cannot be registered on the market. If a product is already registered on the market, well then we know that if it would be working, the growers can pick it up off the shelf and use it immediately. So that was one of our criteria. A lot of the work was actually funded by Zespri, and we had to look at whether the product testing were part of the crop protection program that Zespri recommended for the growers. And finally, we were looking at the expected efficacy in each class. And there's different class of product. There's the product that killed PSA on contact, the product that modify the plant, which are elicitors, and then the biological control agent. Those are the three classes of products that can be used for control of PSA. So here are the different mode of action we just talked about. But what was the driver is that we needed a high throughput, and to have a high throughput, we used a bioassay that's made on little plants. I'll show you in a minute. And so those plants, we needed them by the thousands. We used over 10,000 seedlings that we destroyed in the experiments. So only seedlings were available in those numbers. We wanted the screen to go year-round, so we had to do it in a glass house. And because we wanted the results very rapidly, we wanted after 3 weeks after inoculation to have the results, to have a new lot of product. So therefore, the criteria was only presence of absence of leaf spots. So how can we protect a plant from bacterial pathogens? The first possibility is to create a shield around your plant. That shield can be made by a product that's going to kill the bacteria in contact. Clearly, the shield is going to work if it's put before infection occurs. And so the timing of using those products is absolutely critical. The second option is to use biological control agents. They're represented here by those little blue spots. So this is where the biocontrol agent is going to grow. Some of them will be also able to produce some compound that going to kill PSA or the pathogen. And finally, there's a third way you can protect your plant from a bacterial pathogen. It is elicitation. So now we have a product that either through airborne signal or vascular signal are going to make your plant more resistant. Those products by themselves have no efficacy against the pathogen, but will make your plants resistant. The temptation was, when you had 300 products, to rapidly see which product could kill PSA on plants. And this is the plate assay that is relatively easy to do. You have the positive and negative control, which is the water, positive control, which is streptomycin, and you put any product you want to test. This product here, whatever it is, killed PSA, and it killed PSA very well. In actual fact, it seems it was even better than streptomycin. This product here doesn't work. And you think you could go very rapidly using that assay. This is very misleading for a number of reasons. So here are the limitations. So this assay would work only for products that would kill PSA. So the steroid, it would never pick up the elicitors. All those products that make the plant more resistant are not picked up by this assay. It's relatively difficult to use with biological control agents because the biocontrol agent might grow much faster than your pathogen. And this is the plate, for example, here with the Bacillus subtilis. So you see still a little bit of your streptomycin, but you don't know where the PSA is because the Bacillus subtilis has gone all over the plate. And in actual fact, the fact that your biocontrol agent is growing very rapidly, it is a positive because it is by growing rapidly on the plant, by competing with the pathogen for food and nutrients, that this biocontrol agent is going to work. You also have the case of some product that might be working very well, that has a lot of potential, but in the plate assay will not work. Copper, for example, might precipitate with some of the medium that you're using, and will be completely ineffective on the plate, while we do know that on the plant it does have some effects. Other products might diffuse through the plate and never reach the concentration at which they kill the pathogen, and the mode of action might lead to inhibition of media. So those are details I can't too much. So what is the value? Is there any value in that plate assay? Well, the value is simply if we told we have a product that will act as a steroid, and that the only mode of action of that product is to kill PSA on contact, you can rapidly check whether it is the case or not. Now you've got to be very careful. Things that kill PSA very well on plate might kill absolutely everything. Recently we had a product we were told is a steroid. It works very well. We checked, it does kill PSA at a very low concentration. Unfortunately, when we put it on the plant, an hour after the product was put on the plant, our plants died. This is the water control. Okay, so all those products went through a testing in the glass samples. Here, how the testing was done. So we had a number of plants. A lot of the initial testing was done on Bruno, because Bruno seedlings were the only seedlings available with a high number that were needed for the experiment. We had 6 plants per treatment. Each plant had 4 to 6 leaves. Each leaf is treated individually. Each leaf is inoculated individually. Then sometimes we used a very fancy machine here to spray the product a little bit closer to what happens in the field. After inoculation, those plants are kept in a glass house under high humidity, and 1 week, 2 weeks, and 3 weeks later, we look at the symptoms. The symptoms are ranked in classes. If you have no symptoms on your leaf, which is 0. If you have few symptoms, which initially we thought was about 10% of the leaf, but turns out to be less than that. Basically, that amount of symptoms will give you a 1. That amount of symptoms on the leaf will give you a 2. This will be a 3. When you have even more symptoms, more leaf spots, it will be a 4. And if your leaf is completely covered, or if you have more leaf spots than on that picture here, you rank it as a 5. That is still used, and here are the results we got. So in that experiment, we had some plants that were treated with water and inoculated, or plants that were treated with water and not inoculated, or plants that were treated with streptomycin at 100 ppm and inoculated. We looked after 8 days and 14 days at the amount of necrosis we had on the leaf. The plant that were treated with water, we had 2.5 index as a scale. while the plant that were treated with streptomycin, you had almost no disease at all. That is a typical result we got with streptomycin, the typical results we got with antibiotic. It works well because the antibiotic was put on the plant just before inoculation. If we would know when infection occurred in the field, and if we could use streptomycin in that way, we could expect those results. Unfortunately, at this stage, we do not know when infection occurs, and so therefore, it is why in the field, if we put streptomycin, sometimes we will not get that level of control. All the tests are done in blind. These are typical results of an experiment, so a number of treatments. Here are indexed. 3 bars are a treatment, so blue it is reading after 1 week, after 2 weeks, after 3 weeks. Again, our uninoculated control, our control treated with water and we then inoculated. And the majority of the treatments will give us the same amount of disease as the water control. And that is unfortunately the majority of the 300 products that we tested. The few exceptions, which are here and there, this is actually our streptomycin treatment, and it is treatment that do contain antibiotic. And that has been a consistent result that we got in the glass house. This is now an assay with Actigard, which is an elicitor. So those experiments that were done in my lab with somebody called Luca Fiorentini, who actually is a student of Francesco Spinelli, and he came in New Zealand. We've been working together for over 10 years, and so this is a project that was in common between Bologna University and my lab. And later on, Francesco will explain the logic behind choosing Actigard or Bion, the logic and how we came to the conclusion that this could be a product that works. So those are just the results that shows if you use Actigard, which is also known as Bion, as a foliar spray on green seedlings, we got pretty good results. So here we have Bion at 3 different concentrations. This is our water-treated control, and the amount of disease on the plant that we're treating was very low. That's 7 days after inoculation. If you wait 3 weeks later, your control is, of course, still heavily infected, but your treated plant shows very little symptoms. Elicitors do not need to be provided at the point of inoculation. You can use it as a root drench. In that experiment, the same product on similar plants was used as a root drench, and the results were relatively similar. Very little disease on the treated plants, disease on the water treated, and 5 weeks after inoculation, you still have that huge difference in the amount of leaf spots we have on the treated plants and the non-treated plants. Elicitors do not work on the bacteria, they modify the plant. It takes some time for the plant to react to elicitors and to be in a state where it is protected. This is treatment of again, green seedlings, now with Actigard Bion at only 1 concentration and root application. When the treatment is applied 7 days before inoculation, we have here the amount of disease in the control plant, the water-treated plant, 1 week after inoculation, and here the treated plant, 2 weeks after inoculation, and 3 weeks, and at least for 2 weeks, there is a significant difference in the amount of disease on those plants. If now the product would have been applied just before inoculation, well then there is absolutely no difference between the treated and the control plant. This is expected because elicitors need time to modify the physiology of the plant. If we wait more than 7 days, here we waited 2 weeks to inoculate the plant after they've been treated, and there is at 2 weeks after inoculation, there is difference between the non-treated and the treated plants. If we wait 21 days, in that case, there's a huge difference. So we have the water-treated plants and our Bion or Actigard treated plants 1 week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks after inoculation, and the plants were treated 21 days before inoculation. So elicitors, Francesco will tell you there's two types of elicitors, and one type of elicitors act through the salicylic acid pathway, and we have here a collection of elicitors which all work through the salicylic acid pathway. So that experiment was done on Haywards. That was 21 days after inoculation. That is water, it's treated with water and inoculated. And here we have a number of elicitors that were used for the treatment and inoculation. In this case, you see all those elicitors give a significant reduction of the amount of disease on the plants. We redid the experiment with another Actinidia deliciosa, which is our rootstock Bruno. Now we have our water-treated control. We kept for the same elicitor the same color. So this is the yellows, the greens, and so forth. While here all those elicitors gave virtually similar results, we start here to see some difference. This one here is still working very well. However, the yellow, white, and the blue didn't significantly reduce incidence of PSA. So within the same species of Actinidia, there is some differences in how well a specific elicitor is going to work. If now we change not just the cultivar, but also the species, and now we are on Hot 16A, which is Actinidia chinensis. The elicitors that used to work well on Haywards not only do not work on Hot 16A, but they make them much worse. And we have two of those. We have this product here in blue and here in white that significantly increase the amount of disease. That experiments have been redone a number of times, and we every time had more disease using that elicitors on Hot 16A. Few elicitors are still working very well, and that's the case of this one here in the red. And the point of that slide and of all that I just said is that we need to be careful when you talk about elicitors, because the elicitor works through the plant, and we cannot extrapolate results you've got on deliciosa to chinensis. You cannot perhaps extrapolate what you have on sorrelli to Hot 16A or Hot 16A to another chinensis. You need definitely to redo the experiments with the cultivar you want to use your product on. Coppers, and this is something that was brought in the talk before. The coppers, for us, we found them very difficult to work in the glass house. We have a lot of data that support that copper do reduce PSA infection in the field. We have a lot of those data, but in the glass house we struggle. We struggled because the release of the cupric ion was always difficult to control. But what is clear is that when we add product like OmniWet or Duet, which is a product that allows the copper to spread very well on the leaf, when you have some of those products, we do increase the level of control. And so therefore, the addition of some of those spreader, as it's called in English, do help increase the efficacy of some products. That is demonstrated here with coppers, but it is true with all the products we will be using. Finally, just here a slide to talk about biological control agents. So we have touched on antibiotic, on elicitors, and biological control agents. In this experiment, we have two biocontrol agents. One's called Blossom-Bless, which is a Panthera agglomerans. We have here now uninoculated plants. The inoculated plants 7 days and 14 days after inoculation, and that was treated with water. The plant that was treated with our Panthera or Blossom-Bless, although there is a small reduction in amount of disease, the reduction was very limited. When we use as fluorescence, we have again a little bit of a reduction of disease, but that reduction is limited. Those results are valid only for the condition under which we run the experiment. If we didn't get a huge reduction of disease, it's most probably because that biocontrol agent, under the condition of temperature and humidity we used, was not able to colonize the leaf very well. If we would have used different conditions of temperature and humidity, those biocontrol agents would have colonized the leaf much better and would have given better results. And so biological control agents really have to be developed for a specific set of climatic conditions, and they might be country-specific or even region-specific, or time of the year specific. The biocontrol agent might work in spring, might not work in summer, and vice versa. Finally, so we did all that experiments, we found few products that work, and we start to wonder, are we using the right tool? And so we put a little bit of thought, because now that we went through the 3D product, there is a little bit of time to address the issue in a different manner. So if we think about what happens when we inoculate with PSA, we have an epiphytic population of PSA. So the PSA is on the leaf, it multiplies. And then you will have infection, and then your population becomes endophytic. After a latency period, that's a period when your plant is infected, but you do not see any symptoms. After a latency period, you will have either leaf spot or secondary symptoms. Secondary symptoms would be canker, production of red exudate or white exudate. And the second symptoms can come directly from the endophytic population or after leaf spots. Now, it's important to realize that the environment is influencing each of those steps. The environment is going to influence the infection. The environment is going to influence the latency and also the movement of the bacteria or the modification of symptoms we have in the plant. So therefore now, when we put a product either hoping to control epiphytic or endophytic population, and all we do is to see whether we have leaf spots, we could have some very misleading results, because it could be that we don't see any leaf spots because the environment was playing with the infection or with the latency. And so therefore now we want to find a much better system that allows us to determine much better the real effect of compounds and the effect of product on the epiphytic population, on the endophytic population, and to get rid of the environment factors. And of course, it is also important to realize that for leaf spots you could have other pathogen or abiotic factors that could lead to the symptoms. So this is something we're starting, and I'm going to show now some of the earliest results we just got, which shows the role of the environment on this latency step and the development of symptoms. We had a number of plants that were inoculated. Those plants were not inoculated by spraying, they were inoculated by dipping a toothpick in a suspension of bacteria and stabbing the stem. So we're bringing PSA directly into the plant, directly into the vascular system. Some of the plants were kept in constant humidity, I'm talking about 90% humidity for 3 weeks. After 3 weeks, those plants, so it's called 16A, so it's chinensis. 3 weeks after inoculation, those plants showed some symptoms here at the tip, the necrosis, which developed there, and necrosis from the point of inoculation. Other plants inoculated the same way were kept for 48 hours in high relative humidity, and then put at 60–70% humidity for the remaining of the 3 weeks. Those plants looked very nice. No symptoms at all anywhere except at the point of inoculation. And our question was, did the pathogen invade the plant and the plant not expressing symptoms, or did the plant somehow was able to restrict the movement of the bacteria in the plant? To answer that question, we simply took those plants, 3 of each category, we chopped them in little pieces, and for each piece we looked at the population of live cells of PSA per gram of tissue. Here are the results. On the plant that was in constant humidity, in this part here we found 2.4 to the 5th CFU per gram, that's 240,000 bacteria per gram of tissue. In that necrosis here, which developed very rapidly, we found some of the highest concentration. We're talking about 1,000 million bacteria per gram, and the same here. That necrosis here, 24 hours before we took that pictures, was going from here to there. So all that movement here was done in 24 hours. That was a very fast moving necrosis on the plant. Those, I have to say, were probably the most conducive environmental conditions for PSH. And then we have here, of course, the bacteria that has colonized all this tissue from the point of manipulation. What I want to point out, it is some of the population we found on the petiole. So those are the numbers that are in blue. And I want you to have a look at those leaves here. And you won't see any symptoms because there is no symptoms on those leaves. And yet, when we look at the population of PSA in that petiole here, we have 830 million bacteria per gram of tissue. And yet, that leaf looks perfectly healthy. Same here, 560 million bacteria per gram of tissue. And that was one of the important factors of that study. Now, on the top here, as I said, there's a collapse here of a few bacteria. What was really impressive was the speed at which that necrosis developed and the huge amount of bacteria in this tissue. If we look at the plant that has been left only 48 hours under high humidity, we had bacterial population at the point of manipulation and the petiole of the two leaves next to it. Again, the leaf have absolutely no symptoms, and yet those petiole do contain PSA, although at a much lower concentration. The rest of the plant was absolutely clean. We couldn't find any PSA in the rest of the plant. Here all the symptoms we had after inoculation. Just a little necrosis and a high concentration of PSA at that point and in the petiole around it. And what is interesting and surprising is we put the bacteria inside the plant. We thought that the relative humidity outside the plant would not affect how the bacteria moved, and yet it did. And so now our question is the relative humidity giving a chance to the plant to develop some sort of resistance, some sort of mechanism that constrains the bacteria? Or is it simply that during low relative humidity the bacteria cannot move? So we have an experiment that's going on now where some plants that have been put for a while under low relative humidity are brought back under high relative humidity, and we're going to see whether a simple change in relative humidity will allow the bacteria to start multiplying again, will allow the bacteria to move into the plant again. So yes, that's simply to show that we have the same results with other plants, and the experiment was done a number of times on other sites. Okay, so conclusions. There's many ways to reduce incidence of a disease such as PSA. You can play on the environment, you can play on the plant, you can play on the pathogen. The strategy of control needs to incorporate all those different ways of controlling PSA. Now, it's much better not to have PSA in your orchard than to try to control it, and therefore hygiene measures are extremely important. In New Zealand, we have identified a few products which reduce PSA incidence, and the ones we have identified are the ones that are allowed and by KVH and were presented earlier this afternoon: the streptomycin, coppers, and bioactive apigenelicitors. I have to say we're contemplating having perhaps another antibiotic, which is castorgamycin. Decision hasn't been made, but decision will be made pretty soon. Biological control agents are much more difficult to use because the efficacy is directly dependent of the environment, and general biological control agents work much better under low disease pressure. In our case in New Zealand, especially in the Bay of Plenty, we have a high inocular, we have a high disease pressure, and so we don't expect at this stage to have biocontrol agents to work. Having said that, those biocontrol agents could work in other circumstances where the disease pressure is not as great. And we're in the process of developing those better methods for screening potential products that will tell us how they work. Do they stop the multiplication, or do they stop the movement of PSA in the plants? And that's finally just a little picture, which is quite a cute picture of a kiwi fruit flower. It is blue because we simply put that cane into a vase that had a dye, and we were wondering where the dye would go. We were hoping that the entire flower would be blue, and if it would be blue, the idea was if it was not a blue dye but streptomycin is in the plant, and the plant would be protected. To our surprise, we found that you have, for example, here some parts that are completely blue, so the product has been taken. If it was streptomycin, that blue part would have been protected, but you also part of completely white, and those parts would not be protected. And the same for the petals, and the same for the leaves. It seems you have concentration of the product only in some part of the plants, and so therefore that told us relatively early on that trying to inject product in purified vine was probably very difficult because we couldn't guarantee that the product we injected